that's kind of how you go about answering these guiding questions. Last time we talked about how you have these central questions, you practiced writing them, and you take one of those questions and you think about it in general. Okay, what is the book kind of saying about this thing? What do we think? Is the book existentialist or not? That's what I had you doing at the end of class last time, right? And then this time, we took passages from the beginning, the middle, and the end, and tried to figure out, okay, is this then an existential novel, right? And we could look at we could do what's called close reading, looking at individual words like morbid subversion or no crime and looking at the punctuation there. And we can try and answer that question using the evidence. And it's really important that you kind of try to capture evidence from the scope of the novel, because if you just are grabbing it from one place, you don't see how it's like changing and shifting over time, right? So I want to go back to that question that we had at the beginning of class and do this with another question about motive. All right, so I'm not going to put them up again, but we had, actually I'll put them here. Kills a stranger for money. Kills a stranger because psychotic. Because he has been wronged in some way, and this could include a kind of self-defense. And then we kind of get for different things. He kills someone he loves. He kills someone suddenly. Or it's premeditated. All right, when you guys were having your discussion, which one of these did you think was the worst kind of crime that someone could commit? Yeah?
Premeditated.
Okay, so you're saying if they plan it out, that's the worst. No, that's the worst thing someone can do. Okay, why is it worse if they plan it out? Magic.
Because you had so many options to decide not to.
Okay, so like you had every moment leading up to that crime, you could have thought, oh, this is a bad idea. I'm gonna backtrack on this and not do it. And so it suggests that you're then making multiple decisions to kill someone. Every day you're making a new commitment. Yeah, I get that. Allie?
It was like if you premeditated, it was an accident, so it was not just like a heat of the moment thing. It was something that you were planning on hurting someone, planning on taking.
Okay. Can we call murder accidental ever? Yeah. Why?
Like if someone accidentally, like if you get in a fight and you're not planning on killing someone, but then you push them down the stairs,
yeah,
and they like die from that, that's accidental or like almost like that.
Okay, good. So we can call it an accident, even though it might have been an intentional thing to push that person down the stairs. Because it's sudden and in a split moment, we can call it a kind of accident. Okay? Ella?
I was going to say, kill the stranger for money. Originally, I kind of didn't think that would be one of the higher ones, but when you think about it, there's really never like a big, like, killing somebody for money just isn't really a valid reason to kill somebody because money is so temporary and worldly. I think that one's really high on the list of being the worst, honestly.
Yeah.
Because premeditation could be about anything.
Well, and we could think about, these are kind of divided, right? Because you could premeditatedly kill someone for money, or you could even accidentally kill someone for money based on passions. Like someone wins the lottery and you're just like, I want that, that's horrible. But yeah, you're saying because it's material, this is not a valid reason to kill someone, but there might be valid reasons then?
I don't think that there's ever like a morally justified reason to kill somebody, but I think that there's a hierarchy of what is like bad and what is slightly less bad. I mean, I think it's all terrible, but you can't argue that like a person like killing a child is worse than a person. Like, I think that there's some levels.
Okay, good.
People don't like to admit it.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we've got money as like, nothing to do this, but like money is one of the very worst reasons to kill people. So then what are some of the better reasons for killing people? Yeah.
I think one of my favorite reasons, or not my favorite, I shouldn't say that, but like the most logical making sense reason was the case of like Dixie Rose Blanchard, where her made her sick for so many years. And like, it was, I would call it self-defense in a way, because she hurt her so much and made her so sick for so long, so that she told her to kind of save her own life, even though her mother wasn't actively hurting her in that moment.
Now, I only know that story kind of a little bit, but didn't she kind of premeditate it with a boyfriend?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're saying if it's for a good reason, a kind of self-defense, even if it's premeditated, that's lower down on the list of worst crimes. Okay, so like a woman, let's put it like not even in a real case scenario, like a woman is being abused by her husband for months. She buys the gun, hides the gun, plans to kill this guy because she knows the legal system is not going to support her, and then she goes and kills him because she has this kind of self-defense underlying reason. It's not as bad then as if it was, he was just rich and she wanted the life insurance. It seems obvious to say it like that, right? But like, that's what we're saying. Okay.
Yeah, I think with like killing a stranger or killing suddenly or for like materials, like a lot of why the motives aren't as good is because it's just like a indifference or a disregard for human life, whereas like premeditated, well, it's not right still.
Yeah.
It's like there are other reasons behind it. Maybe like you're doing it for other people or for yourself, like save yourself from some kind of situation.
I see.
Whereas like
It goes up here.
if you're just like killing someone for what they have, like you haven't thought about why, and that's kind of disrespecting. Well, that could be seen as disrespecting them as a person if you just like don't even care.
That's fascinating. That suggests that a crime based on passion then shows respect for human life.
It could be argued. I don't know.
It could
if I
be.
agree with
It
that.
could be because if you're in this, it's like you recognize that person as a person, and even though you hate what that means, there's still a person, and that's what's pissing you off about them, right? Like that's what causes you to take that jump, is because you want to end the thing that you actually have a deep respect for. That's fascinating. Yeah, Allie.
I think this all like ties back to what the interview is about how environment like determines what's gonna crime.
Yeah.
So like in instances where there's self-defense and it's premeditated murder in those cases, then that's the fault of their environment, and they have no other option to save their own life.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, they're gonna take the life.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like at least they see no other option, right? Which takes us back to this question, which we haven't really discussed yet. The psychosis question. Sometimes someone might kill someone because they're crazy. To go back to like a true crime story, there was a guy, this is like the goriest I could possibly bring up. There's a guy in Canada riding the bus who chops off a guy's head and starts drinking the blood. It's very clear that that man is psychotic, right? He didn't, as far as I remember, he didn't serve jail time. He went to a mental institution for a very, very long time. He's out now, by the way. But just roaming the street, riding public transit. I'm just kidding. He was clearly out of his mind, we would say. So what do we do with those kind of crimes? Are those not as bad? I mean, it's obviously an extremely disturbing crime. Would we say that is not as bad as somebody who, poisons someone with carbon dioxide and they just sort of drift off into sleep? Yeah, Jane.
I think in that instance, you almost have to separate the crime, because obviously the crime is a very gruesome thing. The crime itself is very bad, but you have to consider the fact that the person didn't consciously commit the crime as somebody else would. So if it was a fully normal, mentally stable person committing the crime, it probably would be one of the worst crimes to commit, but because they weren't completely conscious, it completely changed the scenario.
Okay, good. Ella?
I think the crime itself should always be considered the same across the board. Like a loss of human life is just a loss of human life. But I think that the responsibility placed on each killer, I guess, is different, because I mean, even in the, what's her name, Gypsy Rose, even in that situation, her mother would have had Munchausen's by proxy. That's mental illness.
Right.
So while like she didn't act like torture raising her daughter, she really can't be held responsible for it. She's meant to feel.
Okay.
So I think, but there's just a lot of gray area in that. Like the crime is always murder is always murder, but like the level of guilt that a person should experience, level of punishment they should experience is different.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I feel like it makes it really, really hard because like you never really will ever get into somebody's mind like fully, and so like it really like brings up the point like how psychotic do you actually have to be? Because I feel like in our like system, like we really do have to like make that a point because like any murder, it's gonna be like removed from the person. Like I feel like it's really, really hard to like I don't know, like kill somebody like in like full like thinking completely through it. Like even if you're like in the army, it's your job. Like I feel like you kind of have to separate yourself.
Right.
And so it's like I don't know. It brings up a really good point. Like you have to determine that level of how psychotic they are.
Right.
And I feel like they always will have kind of that.
You're saying that like no matter what, if you kill someone, there is a bit of psychosis in there somewhere. Yeah, like a dissociation at the very least.
Yeah.
So, if you're supposed to be able to like separate the crime and the person committing it, I always think about like when we were talking about this before. I think about Ted Bundy and how he got away with a lot of murders, but people are like he was mentally ill, so it wasn't totally his fault. But he killed around 30 people, right?
Yeah.
And so is it worth being like, well, he wasn't he was in the right mental state, but to see 30 people be killed, is it okay to say that it was just because he was psychotic, or at that point are you just gonna not make an excuse and say he was bad?
Right, because it also then, so Bundy also said that the reason that I committed these crimes was because I watched too much pornography as a kid.
Yeah.
Right, and so you can also see like the way that they're using environmental factors to excuse what or not they, just him. I think he's the only one who was like, okay. But nobody else really believed that was a reason, but at least for him, he's trying to set that up as an excuse for his actions. With the ultimate goal being, don't punish me as much.
Yeah, I am not well. Don't punish
Yeah,
me.
I'm not well. Yeah, Allie?
Back to what Ella said about like a hierarchy of like crime and punishment stuff. I think that that like crimes based like for self-defense are not like I think that every murder should have some sort of punishment, whether that be like a mental punishment or like an actual like prison, like federal enforced punishment. And so like in like cases of self-defense that are like not premeditated, that's not punishment that's enforced by the government. And then if there's premeditated, that's like it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, but even if someone's like shows signs of like being psychotic or being mentally ill, they should still be punished for their crimes because they still put someone else's mind no matter what.
Yeah.
And so like maybe it shouldn't be as bad for some people, but it should definitely be bad even if like you had some mental illness.
Okay, good. So no matter what, there needs to be some kind of punishment, and that punishment can be more metaphysical in terms of like how you feel, or it could be actually penal and they go into a system. Okay.
People who commit crimes that are psychotic and mentally ill, it could almost be like considered cruel to them to not hold them responsible because you're denying them. I mean, if they're not in the right mindset, they shouldn't be required to serve the exact same punishment as someone who was in their right mindset. But if you're like just excusing them out of the way, that also hurts them more because it shows them that like I have this condition, that means that these rules don't apply to me.
Yeah. So you're dehumanizing them, right? It's like denying them their humanity if you deny them a punishment. I want to get back to what Emberly was saying though about how this all requires then that we understand what's going on in someone's head. Now, I don't remember the term for it, but in the American legal system, the way that you can argue not guilty because of insanity, temporary insanity, you have to prove that the person didn't know in that moment whether it was right or wrong. And it's really, really hard to do. And if we go back again to how we decided basically that this novel is an existentialist novel with deep personal responsibility, but an existentialist novel, then we are kind of suggesting like you can't know what's in somebody's head, right? So then as I think about this question, and this is how it goes, I think about kind of a topic that is interesting in this novel. And to me, the motive question is so interesting because it flips so often. And I know we talked about this on the first day, but it's like you could never really get a handle on why exactly he killed this woman, right? You kind of know why he killed Lizaveta because she showed up, but why did he decide to kill the pawn shop owner? And so I'm thinking through that question, and I start thinking about why anybody kills anybody. Like, what are the motives for crime? And then because we've thought about the crime, then I start thinking about the punishment side of the book, side of the book, right? And I'm thinking, if these are the crimes, then how do we decide what the punishment is? And it seems to me, and I think a lot of people would say this, that punishment is dependent on motive. And it seems like that's what you guys are all sort of suggesting, that that's kind of the right way to set it up, right? If somebody commits a crime in the moment and they didn't have this premeditated motive, that's less problematic than somebody who wanted the life insurance. And somebody who is out of their mind, whether at the moment or their whole lives, that's going to deserve less punishment, or at least a different, more mild style of punishment than somebody who found out their wife was cheating on them and killed her a week later, right? So like there's these varying levels. And in our legal system, we have decided to try and figure out what was in that person's head. And we've decided that through this process of inquiry and uncovering evidence, we should be able to figure it out. Is that fair to say? We should be able to establish motive and then establish guilt and punishment based on motive. So my question about all of this then, that's a horrible sound, sorry about that, is should we base punishments on interior motives, right? Motives are always interior, but I just want to double down on that. Should we base punishments based on that? And that's a question I'm thinking about on my own, and I made you think about just now, but I also believe that that is a question that the novel is thinking about. Is this how we should determine motive? And based on that, is this how we should punish people based on motive? Fair to say? Okay. And I don't want to spend all day on this, but I want to maybe skip then to the epilogue to answer that question. Because I've hinted at how there's all these little tabs here are different places where he talks about his motive, and they're mostly different. So I've got so many different things where he says why he killed her. But at the end, the state decides why he killed her, because that's part of our legal system, and Russian's legal system, apparently. So why don't everybody turn to the epilogue, because you guys do mostly have Constance's translation, but we have different translations. And this is just right at the beginning of the epilogue, so it will be easy to find. Yeah. I have books up here. You can come grab one from the stack, and then when you're done, just leave it on my back table and I will wipe it down. Your germy little fingers. We're all germy.
Dr. Bora, do you like kids?
Kids? No. Teenagers? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
That's understandable.
Do I not seem like I like people your age?
Um,
What? I seem like I like you. Are you serious?
No, I was laughing at.
Oh,
no, I
so-
really don't like us. I just think it's funny because you already kind of treat us like we're just these like like way worse.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I haven't seen a kid in like 6 months.
They're always sticky. Is that your problem with them too?
My problem with kids is that they're boring.
They're
They are annoying.
You know what though? I like them until they
Breathe
get
them the right way.
teeth. It's when they get teeth that I really dislike.
Once they start telling you about their dreams, that's
my
when I'm like, not interested
Oh,
anymore.
no. And they start having their own ideas. I don't know. You're supposed to sit there and be cute.
Okay, I do want to just, as you open to that up, like, I do want to show you a couple, how I would go about this because I do want to demonstrate for you. So, like, for example, here I found a quote that says, affliction. I saw affliction at the bottom of it. Tears and affliction. So I've got, like, a bit of a motive there. Here I've got men are scoundrels. Okay, that's a bit of a motive. Just kill them all because they're all scoundrels anyway. Here I find nature must be guided and corrected, or else we should all be swamped with prejudices. Otherwise, there could never be one great man. So here he's doing it kind of for the common good. But here he says, oh, an opportunity presented myself. What an opportunity is lost forever. So it's like, I did it because I could. I mean, this coincidence happened, and if you were a religious man, maybe he would think that God made the coincidence happen. And here he says it's because of willpower. And that section that we looked at with Sonia, it was because he could, because it was an experiment, right? So just over and over again, he's flipping around. So then I'm going to go to the end of the book, and I'm going to try and figure out, all right, where does this book land, though? And here he is at the trial. And my book, it's in the middle of, I have two giant paragraphs, or I have a small paragraph and then a giant paragraph, and it's in the middle of that giant paragraph. So I'm going to read what mine says, and you can kind of find where it says it in yours. In the end, some of them, especially some who were psychologists, even admitted the possibility that he really did not know what was in the purse because he had hidden it under the stone without looking inside it. But from this, they concluded that the crime itself could have been committed only in a state of temporary mental derangement, so to speak, as the result of homicidal mania, expressed in murder and robbery for their own sakes without motive or calculation. This conclusion coincided happily with the latest fashionable theory of temporary insanity, which our contemporaries so often try to apply to various criminals. Okay. So did someone find kind of where that section is in their paragraph? With someone with the constances one, would you read it out?
Yeah, it says, but they immediately drew the deduction that the crime could only have been committed through temporary mental derangement, through homicidal mania without object or pursuit of gain. As in the most recent fashion, involuntary insanity, so often applied in our criminal cases. Moreover, Raskolnikov hypochondriacal condition was proved by many witnesses, Dr. Zosimov, his former fellow students, his landlady, and her servants. All this points strongly to the conclusion that Raskolnikov was not quite like an ordinary murderer and robber, but that there were other elements in this case.
Okay, awesome. I think most of our key words in this are the same, at least in the Constance version. And mine, here, let me see who did mine. Richard Peace. Okay. So in Richard's version and Constance's version, we use certain words like temporary mental derangement, right? Did you just use temporary? Okay. So it says, let's start from the beginning then. Yours said deducted, they deduced.
Yeah.
That crime itself could have been committed only in a state of temporary mental derangement. Mine says, so to speak. All right, we're trying to determine the tone of the novel. Could someone tell me just like the definition of tone? What is a tone? Yeah.
How the author feels with respect to the text.
Absolutely. So it's not necessarily the feeling that we get. That's like a mood or an atmosphere. It's not about setting. It is the kind of the feeling that the author has about the words on the page, right? So how do you think the author feels about this this line that it was committed only in a state of temporary mental derangement, so to speak? Yeah, Brooklyn.
I think the phrase, so to speak, like it says, like that there's no way to really know. So that's like their best interpretation
based on like the inquiries and what people.
Good, it's like their best guess, right? A best interpretation I like though, because it uses this word deduction. Does anyone know what deductive logic is? I hope, because I can't remember. You gotta know what deductive logic is, right?
I mean, yeah, essentially it's just taking, various observable facts about a specific case and then just, going to the, I guess the most necessary conclusion drawn from those facts and then suggesting that that's really the only viable theory.
Good. So instead of inductive logic, which starts with the theory and tries to find the evidence for it, deductive logic starts with the evidence and then finds the theory.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, good. So they're starting with these observable actions that they saw him have. He buried the treasure. Why did he bury it? He didn't even see what was in it? Okay, then obviously this is what leads from these little bits of evidence, right? But then why the so to speak then? Yeah, Brooklyn.
Something that like kind of confused me is like when it says all this pointed strongly to the conclusion that Raskolnikov was not quite like an ordinary murderer, and that's just kind of like they're just comparing to what they've seen before, the stereotype that murderers and robbers usually fit in, because like that brings up the question like what is an ordinary murderer?
Yeah.
Or like it just makes it sound like, oh, your everyday murderer.
Right.
Like, how would they determine that? And
it's like they're trying to decide if there's any pieces to the puzzle that don't fit into their picture of what criminality is, then that person must be insane then. If he doesn't behave according to my way of rational thinking, then he's out of his mind, right? And so they're basing everything on rational thinking and saying that rationality is so powerful that if you slip out of that rationality and don't look at the purse before you bury it, then you're a crazy person. Yeah, yes.
I think that the way that the author puts this, like with the so to speak, and then later on they say incidentally and then moreover and stuff, I think it kind of shows, not necessarily that they disagree with it, but they think it's like boring and too straightforward. Like I think the author really believes in that like complexity and stuff, and that the idea of them just being like, oh, it's just temporary insanity, and like these are the reasons why. I think that the author really just thinks that's too straightforward.
Yeah, I like that. And he could say like, he could have used different phrases to describe that there. He could have said like, it was temporary derangement, like maybe, or something like that. But he says so to speak. Why the speak? What is important about the fact that he's saying so to speak? Yeah.
I almost feel like it's like, to me, when I like hear that, it's like my parents are like, well, so to speak, you're doing this or like whatever. It's almost like a form of doubtfulness while they're saying it, because like there's no way to really tell somebody's what's going on in their mind. So they're saying, so to speak, we do think he's insane, but like it's almost like they're doubting it because they don't know for sure.
Okay, so like as they're speaking the thing, they are also
questioning
doubting the
it.
way that they're speaking it. Okay. Yeah.
I almost see it as sort of a so to explain, right? So to provide some sort of explanation, so to provide justification to lock them away and the like, to just make this more simple and make our jobs easier. Let's just attribute this motive, these reasons, and then kind of move on to the next case.
Yes, absolutely. And I think by giving it that linguistic label, temporary insanity, which is what they speak out as they say, like not guilty for reasons of temporary insanity, right? That it gives them that justification then that they can just lock him away now for a certain amount of time, but they don't need to worry too much about, who he'll be when he gets out of that system, right? So they can just, like you guys were saying, they can just make it simple and they can just attach a label to it. And this has a problem with labels because it says the conclusion coincided happily with the latest fashionable theory of temporary insanity. All right, let's look at the happily there. Is there really anything happy about the fact that he killed the pawnbroker and Elizaveta? No, right? There's nothing happy about that. So why is this conclusion coincided happily? Brooklyn?
is it like they're able to make it fit conveniently into the frame of thinking that most people would accept everything?
Yeah, and that comes with a happy emotion. We feel satisfied, we feel happy when things make sense to us rationally. Like now that we've decided he's crazy, even though he's out of his mind, we are now in our minds and we understand the steps of this. Yeah.
Mine is phrased differently, so it says, incidentally, this was supported by the recently fashionable theory of temporary insanity, which is applied so often in our time. And I think the way of saying it that way is like, I don't know, it's kind of bringing up the fact that these judges are very influenced by like latest trends and stuff, and they wanted it to like work with those. And so I think it was just like, oh, and that's like super easy because it actually works in this way, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's too simple.
Yeah, but you think about that again, back to that existentialism, right? And the way that this idea of trendiness, a idea that society has come up with to explain actions, has nothing to do with the interior reality of the person. And so, yeah, the latest fashionable theory, that has a stank on it. You know, it's a bit sarcastic there to say fashionable. Usually if you say, oh, that's so fashionable, it feels like a positive connotation. But here you should read probably more like trendy. Oh, that outfit's so trendy. Does that ever feel good if someone says that your outfit's trendy or the thing that you're doing is trendy? It's kind of like that. It's like, it's so expected in a cliche way. Oh, this ruling of temporary insanity is cliche. And it says, which are contemporaries, in mine, it says, so often try to apply to various criminals. So it's like, I think in yours it said they do it often now, right? Or
Yeah, so often in our time.
so often in our time. And here it says that they try to apply to various criminals. So it kind of even makes that, in mine, the try makes it even clearer, which is like, they're trying to establish a motive, but really, according to the tone here, did they establish a motive? Like they established it legally for sure in their court of law, but do they really understand the motive? No. And why is that, do you think? Is it because it was a bad case? Is it because the trial didn't go well? Like, what do you think the book is trying to say here with this snide comment about the legal system? Allie?
I think it's trying to say that the rationalization like way too much, and like they should have just viewed it as with the human perspective rather than like a rational existentialism kind of perspective.
So it's actually like that, right? They're trying to give it a rational perspective to his crimes, and you're saying they're denying the human perspective. So if we put it like this with the verses, what is that telling us about humans?
They're irrational.
That they're irrational. Yeah, that they don't fit into those rational boxes, right? So then, if we're answering this question, should we base punishments on interior motives? How do you think the book would answer that? Okay, don't say it out loud. I want you to actually practice writing that. So, do you have paper? We didn't get the Chromebooks out. I'm gonna have you do that again for the next class. Okay, so we're once again talking about how we answer our guiding questions then. Step one, kind of think about it. Think about it vaguely in your own life. Step two, think about it in the ways that the book thinks about it. Step three, find the quotations that you can actually dig into and close read to find evidence. Step four, answer the question according to the book. So we're thinking about this from the book's perspective. Is this book saying, how is this book answering this question? Should we base punishment on interior motives? And I phrase it as a yes or no, but see if you can say like why or why not. Does that make sense? All right, so I want you to try and answer it then in a single sentence. How does the book answer that question?